Chapter 4 Katie's Amazing Revelations. Joanne gasped in disbelief. What do you mean it wasn't Barry? Of course it was him. It wasn't. But it must have been. We met him. We spoke to him. We heard him sing. I tell you, Joanne, it wasn't him. Katie was adamant. I know it wasn't. You're trying to tell me it was someone pretending to be him? An imposter? It must have been. But who and why? I don't know. I just know it wasn't Barry. Joanne shook her head. Katie, don't you think you're being slightly ridiculous? I can understand that he might not have lived up to your expectations, but an imposter? It doesn't make sense. Joanne, am I normally, I don't know, imagine negative? Do I usually make up stupid stories? No, you don't. I'm the one with the vivid imagination. You're always so level-headed. Exactly my point. They were at the bus stop now. Katie looked at her watch. The bus will be along in a few minutes. Katie, you're so infuriating. I feel utterly confused. Is it all a joke? Is it like me to make jokes like this? No, I must admit the jokes are my domain as well, agreed Joan with a grin. Look, here's the bus already. That was well timed, wasn't it? The pair bounded onto the bus, paid their fares, and sat on the back seat. Joan rubbed a clean patch in the rear window and peered through it at the distant crowd of people surging towards the bus. Oh, look, Katie, they must all be coming from the theater. What a shame. They missed the concert, and now they've missed the bus. But they haven't missed Barry Nichols, said Katie firmly, because he wasn't even there tonight. Mrs. Millwood was surprised to see the girls back so early. What happened? She asked. Anything wrong? They told her the story. Joan did most of the talking, and Katie kept fairly quiet. Mrs. Millwood put her arms around her daughter's shoulders. That's an awful pity, Katie. You must be terribly disappointed. But at least you managed to meet your idol, and that's a thrill you'll never forget. Yes, I'll never forget it. Katie looked tired, as if she had been worrying and thinking very deeply. Joan had seen her like this before, and knew that she was the sort of person who liked to get things sorted out. Her organized mind would not rest if anything was puzzling her. I think I'll have an early night, Mom, she said at last. An excellent idea, replied her mother. Quite frankly, you look as if you need one. I'll make some supper, then you can go to bed while I take Joan home. On the way home, Mrs. Millwood asked Joan if Katie was very upset. No, I don't believe she is, said Joan. I'm not sure, really. She hasn't said very much. Joan was at a loss as to what else to say. As Katie had not mentioned her claim of an impostor to her mother, she decided that she should not speak of it either. She was very quiet, went on Mrs. Millwood. Still, I suppose she'll be all right after a good night's sleep. All the build-up and excitement must have exhausted her. Yes, that's probably it, hedged Joan as the car drew up outside her house. Good night, Mrs. Millwood, and thanks for your lift. Please tell Katie that I'll call round tomorrow. Not too early, mind. It's traditional to have a lie-in during the holds. At least it is in our family. Okay, laughed Katie's mother. I dare say you're pretty exhausted yourself. I know I am, and I'm not even a Barry Nichols fan. I don't think I'd know him if I met him face to face. Joan gulped. She had almost said, but Katie would, but she stopped herself in time. She instinctively kept quiet. Let Katie do the talking if and when she wants to do, she mused. After all, it's she who thinks tonight's Barry Nichols isn't really Barry Nichols. Next day, the girls went shopping. It was market day, and amid the noise and bustle of the shoppers, the shouts of stall-holders, and the laughter and cries of the children, the mystery of the previous night could almost have been forgotten. But Joan knew Katie well enough to know the matter would not simply go away, and, indeed, just to look at Katie's face confirmed this. It was as if there was a shadow hanging over the girl. Poor thing, thought Joan. She reminded her of one of those politicians who appeared on television whenever there was some kind of constitutional crisis, and who said, We must really get to the bottom of this. All the facts must be revealed. Perhaps Katie should become a politician, or one of those investigative journalists. So far that day, Katie had not spoken about Barry, But Joanne knew that it was only a matter of time before she would do. And that came when they did something they always did on market day. Visit the tiny cafe for coffee and homemade buttered scones. Actually, it was another customer, a plump woman at the next table, who broke the ice about Barry. She had a copy of the local newspaper containing an article about the concert. There was so little space in the cramped, timber-beamed cafe that the girls could hear every word the woman said to her companion. "It's all about that Barry Nichols in here," she began. "Our Jackie went to see him last night at the theater, you know. She reckons that what she did see of him wasn't up to much anyway. She was very disappointed, really she was." "Oh, dearie me, what a shame," sympathized her equally tubby friend, between loud slurps of piping hot tea. "Do you hear that?" whispered Katie, smiling. "I'm not the only one who thinks Barry Nichols wasn't up to the scratch last night." "But there's a bit difference," answered Joanne. "She said that her daughter was disappointed with Barry's performance, not that he was an impostor. I know otherwise." "Katie, how do you know? How do you know for sure?" "I know all right, but I can't tell you here. Everyone will hear what I say. We'll talk later." "Okay, then." An awkward silence followed while Joanne stared in irritation at her friend. "Change the subject," demanded Katie. Joanne laughed. Oh, this is a quaint old building, isn't it?" she said, looking round. "I wonder just how old it is." "Don't know exactly, but it's certainly very old. All the buildings around the marketplace are about the same age." "I love this part of town." "So do I. Do have another scone, Joe. They're delicious." Once outside the cafe, the pals strolled past market stalls, looking at all the wares on display. "Look at these gorgeous sweaters," enthused Joanne. She looked at the price tags. "I wish I could afford one." "So do I." "Perhaps I'll get one for my birthday," said Joanne wistfully. "If Mum asks me what I want, I'll suggest one, though it might be beyond our means." "Certainly beyond my means at the moment," murmured Katie. "Mind you," she added, "if we could get holiday jobs, our financial problems would be solved." "A job round here would be nice, on the stalls or perhaps in one of the little shops like the cafe." "There's nothing. I've looked." "I know, jobs are snapped up as soon as they're advertised." "Hey, where's the divine smell coming from?" "From the stall that sells fresh bread and cakes," said Katie. "Oh yes, that's it. They deliver the baking while it's still hot from the oven, don't they? Shall we buy some goodies and take them back home for tea? To your house, I mean. No use taking them back to our place because they'd be gobbled up in seconds. Honestly, I swear my brother Tim eats more than his own weight every day, and little Jamie's getting just as greedy." Katie laughed. Joanne's tales of her unruly family always amused her. "Yes, let's take some lovely bread rolls and fresh cream cakes. I could do with a treat." "Mum's not home yet, thank goodness," said Katie, putting on the kettle. Joanne brought the bread rolls and cakes through to the kitchen and set the table. Soon they were both enjoying a luscious feast. "Right," said Joanne firmly. "No one can overhear our conversation. So, will you please tell me what all this Barry Nichols business is about?" Katie began slowly. "It's not easy to explain." "Ah, I get it. Now you're admitting that you've been a teeny bit too imaginative, eh?" suggested Joanne. Katie leaned forward over the table and said seriously, No, Joanne, I haven't. I'm still as sure now as I was last night that the person we met was an impostor." "Think calmly about it all," sighed Joanne. "Consider the situation. Ever since you first heard Barry's voice and saw him on television, you've idolized him. You imagined what it would be like to meet him. I know how you felt, and so do millions of other girls. That's how stars become stars in the first place. But suddenly the dream comes true, and you're going to see him, hear him sing live, and even speak to him. You build yourself up to it, but then, when you're face to face with this magnificent creature, you realize that he's another ordinary person after all, just like you and me." "But Joanne, no, let me finish. I've worked it all out. Naturally, you feel down and bitterly delusioned. It's a common reaction that happens all the time. My mother went through a similar experience when she met a film star, donkeys years ago. I don't remember his name. It was someone you'd never know. Anyway, whenever he comes on television in some ancient black and white film, She starts going on about how she wishes she'd never met him, because it had shattered all her lovely dreams. But in your case, Katie, you can't accept. And I think that's because you're so used to being right all the time. Don't talk daft, was Katie's comment. It's true. Joanne continued her analysis of Katie. Let's face it, you don't make many mistakes like I do. So, because you don't, you won't believe that your precious Barry might be less than perfect. You've convinced yourself that it really cannot be him. Have you quite finished? Asked Katie, forcing a yawn and pretending to be dozing off. Yes. Joanne took a deep breath and smiled triumphantly. A very eloquent speech, I must say, but you are totally wrong. All right, clever clogs, what have you got to go on? Intuition and guesswork? Mainly. It was partly intuition at first. Right from the beginning, when I first set eyes on him, I felt that things weren't quite right. I told myself that I was being silly, like you said, imagining things, exaggerating and blowing everything out of proportion. Even after the performance, I tried to convince myself that I was wrong. So, when did you really think you were right? I don't know exactly, sort of gradually. How apart from intuition? Little things. For instance, do you remember how Barry was holding that kitten and stroking it? Yes, you asked him if he liked cats. And he said he did. Maybe he does. No, Joanne, he doesn't. Barry Nichols can't bear to be near cats because he's allergic to them. They make him itch and sneeze. The real Barry would never stroke a cat, especially a few minutes before a performance. Joanne laughed. Really, Katie, that's a bit weak, isn't it? In the first place, how do you know so much about his medical condition? I know everything about him, Joe. I've read everything there is to know. I've saved all the fan club newsletters, and I've followed his career right from the start. Okay, fair enough, but how can you be sure that he's not recovered from his allergy? He may have had expensive treatment in some Swiss clinic somewhere. It makes no difference. Even if he had, he still wouldn't chance having a relapse by cuddling a kitten just before going on stage. Oh, you're the limit, said an exasperated Joanne. And what's more, did you see the way he sniffed at those flowers you presented to me? Joanne slapped her head to her forehead in amazement. Don't tell me he's allergic to flowers too. Exactly. Katie, you cannot base all your suspicions on these supposed allergies. Nothing supposed about it, answered Katie glumly. Have you any more evidence? Yes, but what's the point of my telling you? You'd never believe me. Give me a chance. Come on, spill the beans. Well, he was so cold and charming. Did you not notice that? Not a bit affectionate like the real Barry would have been. Actually, never having made his acquaintance before, I wouldn't know whether Barry Nichols is as warm as a toast or as cold as a fish on a slab. There you go again. Sorry, Katie, carry on, please. Tell me more, if you can think of any more. Scoff on all you like, Joanne, but I do have something else to go on, something indisputable. I can't wait. I know for a fact that Barry is 6 feet tall. How do you know that? Because I've read it dozens of times and heard it from his own lips on television. And the man we met was hardly any taller than me, and I'm long way short of 6 feet. That's easily explained, said Joanne. Sheer vanity. He wanted to be thought of as being taller than he actually is. He wouldn't lie on television, and I've seen pictures of him standing next to other people. He certainly looked tall on them. The only way he could fake that would be to have him photographed with midgets. Joanne giggled at the suggestion of Katie's. I can see we'll have to start calling you Sherlock Holmes. You believe me then? Katie, I suppose that deep down I never doubted you, but I had to test you, didn't I? I'm really relieved that you have faith in me. The big question now is, what can we do about it? Good question. What can we do about it? Perhaps we should ask ourselves if we should do anything. What do you mean? Naturally, we must do something. Why, Katie? Why can't we forget it? It doesn't affect us, does it? Aren't you positively eaten up with curiosity? I'm afraid not. I can't get so intense about a rock star who, for some unknown reason of his own, decides to let a double take his place. Perhaps he needs a rest. Perhaps he's really lost his voice, like he was supposed to have done last night. It's his secret. Let it stay with him. We have enough to do at the moment, looking for holiday jobs. Oh no, Joanne, we have stumbled across something and we're going to sort it out. I know you're all for an easy life, but you don't think I'd let this go, did you? No, smiled Joanne wistfully, putting on the kettle for more tea. I didn't think you would somehow. End of chapter 4.